Let me tell ya. And it's a world that man can eat at all. When things are big that should be small. Who can tell what magic spells we'll be doing for us? And I'm giving all my love to this world, only to be told I can't see, I can't breathe, no, my will be. And nothing's gonna change the way we live. 'Cause we can always do the never give. And now the things are changing for the worse. See, whoa, it's a crazy world we're living in. And I just can't see that half of us immersed in sin is all we have to give these futures made of virtual insanity. Now always seem to have love this love we have for pieces, twisting our value technology. Oh, now there is no sound, but we all live underground. And I'm thinking what a mess we're in. Hard to know where to begin. If I could slip, the sleeping times of earth the man has made. And now every mother can choose a color. Every child, that's my nature's way. Well, that's what they suggest.
See no shit like that. Let's sleep further know what it is you really do.
Yeah. What it do, y'all? What it do? What it do? What it do? What it do? I'm reporting live from the telly, as you can see, out here in the Lou. I'm your host with the motherfucking most, Chill Murray, live from the Spot Podcast. Shout out to everybody tuning in or not tuning in. You know how we do and how we rap. What's good? Fast life forever. Positive energy and peace and blessings to you as well, King. I see you on the other side of this upload. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So we're going to get right into this because we have, needless to say, we have probably one of the wildest wild pods that we are going to have here this evening. As you see, we have called this one Star Wars because we are going to go back into the beginning of time on this one. And I mean the beginning of motherfucking time on this one. So I was building with my brother King Ozma in the DMs, and we stumbled across something. So he had mentioned before about the aliens underneath the ice and Antarctica and things like that. And we'll deep dive more into that particular area, of course, as far as Antarctica. But we were just thinking and just brainstorming on, and like I said, building on different things. And I started to say, you know, there are said to be reptilian humanoids, right? And then I thought about it. I was like, well, our creators are Anunnaki. What if, and this was just a far-fetched thought that I had in my head, what if it's the Anunnaki versus the reptilian race, right? It was just a far-fucking-fetched thought. The more I dug, the more that far-fetched thought turned into actual truth. And what was dug up, I said, oh my God. Because that would make a lot more sense to why all the irrational movement is even going on right now within that possible reptilian race, allegedly. All the irrational movement as far as, you know, the wars, the mass shootings, and the one world currency, and things just starting to move rapidly fast as if the actual world is coming to an end and they want to start to move everybody underground. I said, this is all starting to make a lot more sense now. The whole reptilian versus Anunnaki thing is starting to make a lot of sense. So, of course, some people probably don't know who the Anunnaki is. So, of course, I might be going off on a tangent right now, and some of you are like, what in the fuck is he talking about? So, I want to first give you guys a background story of what the Anunnaki is. The Anunnaki is said to be our creators of man. They're said to be our creators of man, derived from the Nephilim. The Nephilim was here before us. The Nephilim were said to be the giants, as you will. So once the giants rebelled against the Anunnaki, they created us. Once they removed the Nephilim, or should I say we removed the Nephilim, the birth and creation of us started to come. Okay, so I'm going to play here a clip that breaks down a little bit more of who the Anunnaki might be for you guys. And then we're going to get into some other things because, like I said, this is going to be a wild one. So this is pretty much the introduction of who the Anunnaki is and who they are to us. Like I said, they are the creators of humanity. Matter of fact, before I even play that clip, I would like to go over here. Let's go on over here to the actual wiki right here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So it even says right here, the Anunnaki, Sumerian, also transcribed as Anunnaki, Anoa, Anunnaki, and other variations, are a group of deities of the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. Now, you've heard those before, especially the Babylonians. If you think about, I think Stargate, right? It's crazy how they had a show called Stargate, right? And it's literally about this portal underneath a base that, you can travel throughout different times and space continuum, right? Stargate. Said to be a actual Stargate underneath Antarctica. Again, we'll get into that later on. In the earliest Sumerian writings about them, which come from the post-Akkadian period, the Anunnaki are deities in the pantheon descendants, of An and Ki, the god of the heavens and goddess of the earth. So think about that. The god of the heavens and goddess of earth. Literally, they are, if you want to think about who is God and we think about who's heaven, who's in heaven, I should say, there you go right there. The goddess of heavens and the goddess of earth. They're literally in charge of us. And their primary function was to decree the fates of humanity. They should not be confused with the Apkallu. So literally says it right there. Decree the fates of humanity. Okay, so if we're talking about God versus the devil, we really pretty much are talking about the Anunnaki versus the reptilians. If we're thinking about it, if we're talking about where the supposed devil even derives from, right? That would be from underground, the serpent, if you will, right? Reptilians. But when you think about light, okay, energy, you think Anunnaki. Again, if we're talking about God versus the devil, we're actually talking about Anunnaki versus the reptilian race. So, well, not the reptilian race, but we're talking about the reptilians that actually run the world, the politicians, if you will. So, let me play here, like I said, the clip that explains a little bit more to you guys of who the Anunnaki is. Like I said, I understand that this one will probably be the least watched. I understand that this might be the most watched. But like I said, I've also noticed that Drake seems to get more attention on this channel than the actual truth for some reason. But I noticed the truth actually entertains y'all more, which is a very weird concept. It's a very weird concept. Very, very weird concept. Drake gives the views, but this content lives on the channel. I don't understand it whatsoever. But all right, so without further ado, let's get into the Anunnaki.
Cycles and what's now modern-day Iraq. After all, here are just some of what they gave us. The modern calendar, based on lunar cycles, the 60-20 counting system used for geometry and measuring time, the wheel, the plow, irrigation systems like levees and canals, sailboats. They even spoke the first known language. And, most importantly, they left evidence of the first recorded writing. That's a lot of intelligent contributions to humanity. So why aren't we taught more about this clearly advanced and influential civilization? Well, connect the dots and you'll discover why the omission could be deliberate. Sumerians were accurate in creating many advanced systems, yet we dismiss their history of man as mere mythology. And why is that? Well, if we gave the same credibility to their written history as we've given their inventions, we'd be teaching a completely different version of our origins, and we'd be thinking a lot more about what our future may hold. So let archaeologists continue to debate the history and evolution of man. If you go to the source, here's what the first civilization ever to record history revealed about our past. In 1849, a British archaeologist discovered 14 tablets in Sumeria. To date, these are the oldest known writings, and they date back to the 24th century BC. While the stories on them share much of what other ancient writings say, they put a whole new spin on the other ancient sacred texts. You see, while they do refer to a father of all beginnings, or some kind of ultimate supreme being, the tablets say that the creators in Genesis, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, these were polytheistic gods of ours, otherworldly beings, or just plain out, they were aliens. The entire first 2 tablets explain who they were and where they were from. Tablet 3 tells of the 6 days of creation, or settlement, on Earth. Later, they explain how the human race was genetically manipulated by these beings and did not evolve randomly. Even the technology Sumerians gave us came from these beings. Are you interested now in knowing more about what the Sumerians had to say about our history? Here are selected legends from the 14 tablets and their parallels with other ancient sources. According to the Sumerian tablets, 445,000 years ago, creator gods, as they call it, came to Earth. The only inhabitants of Earth were wild and undomesticated animals, and early ancestors of man. These beings were called the Anunnaki, which means those who from heaven to earth came. The Anunnaki inhabited a distant orbiting planet called Nibiru, which only entered our solar system every 3,600 years. They describe Nibiru as many times the diameter of Earth and abundant with iron oxide, making its rivers and lakes.
Now, think about that, right? If you remember, they said that there was some super planet, right? Nibiru was about to hit Earth. I literally remember seeing an article about that. See? As a matter of fact, here. Look at this. It says hypothetical planet. Now, this is from NASA. Okay? This is from NASA. NASA called it Planet X. Okay, let me pull it up here for you real quick. Because I do remember that, hearing about that as well, now that she's mentioning it. So this from science.nasa, hypothetical planet X. Caltech researchers have found mathematical evidence suggesting that there may be a planet X deep in the solar system. This is hypothetical Neptune-sized planet orbits our sun in a highly elongated orbit far beyond Pluto. But it's supposed to be, look, may take between 10,000 and 20,000 Earth years to make one full orbit around the sun. This was supposedly the, like I said, planet Nibiru. Let me look at the other articles here. Look. Scared of planet Nibiru, NASA would like to help. 3 years from now, a planet called Nibiru will collide with the Earth. That was back with 2009, of course. Now, nothing actually happened where Nibiru didn't actually collide with the Earth or anything like that. Now look at this. Washington Post. Will this mysterious shadow planet Nibiru liberate Earth? So, this isn't the first time that you've heard of that planet.
Appear red. Now, a side note about Nibiru. According to the tablets, Nibiru's atmosphere began to deteriorate and become a hostile place for life, and in order to restore it, the Anunnaki needed one important element for their atmosphere: gold. Now, here are a few interesting facts. There is proof that gold nanoparticles can be used to repair our damaged ozone. It shields radiation, which explains why NASA uses gold foils in their space stations. While NASA is currently aware of 8 official planets in our solar system, there has been much speculation about the wobbly orbit of 2 planets, which points to the likely gravitational pull of a very large mass, which has yet to be discovered. Now, detection of this mass traces back decades, but in October of 2017, NASA published an article called "The Super Earth That Came Home for Dinner," stating, there are now 5 different lines of observational evidence pointing to the existence of Planet 9. If you were to remove this explanation and imagine Planet 9 does not exist, then you generate more problems than you solve. Clearly, there is potential of another planet yet to be discovered in our solar system. Now, when the Anunnaki arrived, they were capable of living lives that spanned hundreds of thousands of years. They created a mining settlement they called Eridug, Earth Station 1, in the Persian Gulf, under a leader named Enki. The tablets convey, after a kingship descended from heaven, it was in Eridug. These visitors were not alone. They brought another extraterrestrial race with them. They were called the Ajiji, and they worked as their slaves. The Ajiji were considered inferior. They served the Anunnaki by mining gold. As civilizations grew, the Ajiji endured crushing labor. And these stories are consistent with Babylonian tablets from the 18th century BC. When the gods, manlike, bore the labor, carried the load, the gods' load was great, the toil grievous, the trouble excessive. The great Anunnaki made the Ajiji undertake the toil. After many centuries, the Ajiji rebelled, mistakenly believing they could overcome these oppressive masters. Their defeat almost completely annihilated their race, leaving the Anunnaki without a workforce. Unable to replace the Ajiji, Nibiru's ruler, Anu, ordered his son Enki to genetically engineer a new slave race, one that was intelligent enough to perform complex work but still be subservient to the Anunnaki. His experiments are recounted in detail in Atrahasis. Many unique creatures were created. Enki finally successfully met his goal, and the result? A genetic hybrid between Earth's caveman, Homo erectus, and the Anunnaki themselves. This hybrid we call Homo sapiens. The tablets called first men the Adamu. In Hebrew, Adam means man.
So there you have it. So Adam and Eve originally started from the person Adamu, who was actually Adam. Okay? So that whole Adam and Eve story, which was pretty much made up, it even sounds like a fairy tale if you want to think about it. The whole Adam and Eve story was pretty much made up as far as the whole Adam bit the apple and everything like that, and created sin and everything. That whole thing was sort of made up as far as the creating of sin. We can get into Christianity and all that later on. Fast Life, you mentioned before about how everything was made to be science fiction. Yes, everything has been made to be science fiction. It's actually scientific fact, if you really want to break it down. Everything that they've made to be TV shows about science fiction, majority of that shit has been scientific fact, if we're really going to be getting into it today. And as you just heard, like I said, the first man and woman, of course, were supposedly, like I said, Adam and Eve, but it wasn't the actual story that people, have been perceived to actually learn. It was actually a situation where, like I said, it was the Nephilim had rebelled against the Anunnaki, and basically we were the hybrids that were made after that rebellion to basically supersede what the Nephilim were actually doing and the Ajiji were actually doing. So the Ajiji, of course, were the workers that pretty much got tired. And when we were made, we were the workers that did not get tired.
Anunnaki put the Homo sapiens to work in the mines and elsewhere in Mesopotamia. The Semitic word avad, or worship, literally means work for. Hence, early men had no choice but to worship their gods. According to the pictographs and texts, these Anunnaki, who we know lived many centuries, were giants compared to the Homo sapiens. Now, because their main purpose in life was to serve the Anunnaki, Homo sapiens were, in return, educated with social skills and academic affairs and technology. All this is abundantly clear in the tablets. The new human slaves were sterile, but as the demand for workforce increased, they were re-engineered so that they could reproduce. This later led to an overpopulation. So later, many humans were banished from the safety of their cities, giving rise to the story of the Garden of Eden and the story of banishment from paradise for procreating. As humans evolved to become more intelligent, some Anunnaki leaders bred with these humans.
So real quick, just want to pause it real quick, as you just heard. So the Adam and Eve story was actually made up, and it was pretty much because the overpopulation that happened. So if you think about the Georgia Guidestones, even says keep humanity under 500 million. So they pretty much were even trying to follow it even back then, hundreds of millions of years ago, of keeping humanity underneath a certain number. So when it started to be overpopulated, that's when they started to make that story up of the whole the reproduction got to be a little bit too high, so no procreating. That's really what that even came from right there.
The children which resulted from these forbidden unions between races were called the Nephilim, or giants of old. Tablets say that these practices enraged Enlil, the Anu leader of that time, who was also the brother of Enki. Enlil wanted to ensure no human would ever rise to power and potentially rule Nibiru. Naturally, the interbreeding increased that risk, but it was beyond his control. Human populations increased over the following millennia, only to be met with a population control plan that nature had in store. During one of its 3,600-year cycles, Nibiru's orbit created havoc on the sun and on Earth. Nibiru is also called the Destroyer in the Kolbrin, which is an ancient gospel found in Scotland that was omitted from biblical text, much like the Dead Sea Scrolls were. It reads, "Men forgot the days of the Destroyer. Only the wise know where it went, and that it shall return at the appointed time. The Destroyer, its color, bright and fierce and ever-changing, was an unstable appearance, a fierce body of flames." Though stating Nibiru usually passes without causing harm, the tablets describe one cataclysmic event which occurred when Nibiru neared Earth. It says, first, black spots appeared on the sun's surface. The Earth's magnetic field became weaker, the temperature rose, and ice caps began melting. This event we call the Deluge, or the Great Flood. It also reads, "For days before the day of the deluge, the earth was rumbling, groaning, as if with pain. For nights before the calamity struck, in the heavens, Nibiru as a glowing star was seen." Well, according to the tablets, Enlil saw the oncoming disaster as an opportunity to rid the planet of humans that he deemed unworthy. He returned to Nibiru, but many Anunnaki chose to stay, instead witnessing the flooding and the destruction on the planet from their celestial boats which circled the earth. It reads, "Then there was darkness in daytime, and at night The moon, as though by a monster, was swallowed. The earth began to shake by a force before unknown. It was agitated. In the glow of dawn, a black cloud arose from the horizon. The morning light turned to darkness. Then the sound of a rolling thunder boomed, and lightning lit the skies. On that day, on that unforgettable day, the deluge with a roar began. At that point, the South Pole's huge ice sheets collided and fell into the ocean. This would have created tsunamis everywhere, traveling north to the gold mines in Southeast Africa. The tidal wave continued north until it reached and submerged the city of Eden, one of the first Anunnaki settlements on Earth, now located somewhere at the bottom of today's Persian Gulf. Witnessing the cataclysm, Enki, who felt sympathy for his creations, instructed his chosen ones to build boats. Among these few humans was Zayasudra, we know as Noah, and his family. A great storm with heavy rains started. The tidal wave kept sweeping the earth for 7 days until it finally came to a halt. But the heavy rains continued for 40 more days and nights. The story of the deluge is recorded in almost every civilization on our planet.
So think about it. They called it the deluge or the delusion, but it was actually the story of the 40 days and 40 nights. So see how all these biblical stories even that, were in the Bible? All of these had their own original derivative of them and what they were originally for. So when they say, oh, such and such talked to God, they were talking about talking to Enki.
Core ice samples taken from Greenland and Antarctica illustrate that at the height of the last ice age, the sea levels were 425 feet lower than they are today. And, more importantly, there is a clear indication of a rapid sea rise. After the deluge, reconstruction of a new spaceport began. The text describes how the Anunnaki made their buildings according to the position of the stars. It reads, "Let the heart of the plane, the heavens, reflect." Once Enki to this agreed, and Leal from the skies of distances took measures. Indeed, the pyramids, now questioned to be much older than originally determined, and many other ancient monuments are, in fact, aligned to the stars. When the Anunnaki finally left Earth, their influence had reached every corner of the world, from Mesopotamia to India to South America. Before they left, they gifted humanity the Sumerian civilization, which was inexplicably advanced for its time, having made a sort of a sudden appearance as a mature and highly organized culture that came out of nowhere. The Anunnaki taught the Sumerians their way of life and established monarchs. Now here's where it gets interesting. The kings would act as their emissaries on Earth and rule the people according to ancient principles. Unbeknownst to man, royal bloodlines were genetically manipulated by the Anunnaki. This would in turn explain the strong aversion by nobility to interclass breeding. Some people speculate that the Anunnaki have deceptively managed to control the Earth through this selective breeding of nobility for centuries, millennia. Others speculate that, as the tablets indicate, Nibiru may once again come close to our planet, and then the Anunnaki will return and restore rule over the slave race they created. This would explain the secrecy around the Sumerian recorded history.
Not only that, it explains the whole, like I said, the whole thing about them trying to make Nibiru and Planet X look like it doesn't exist or like it's some conspiracy theory. Nibiru was actually the planet of the Anunnaki. So, like I said, in past life, like I said, the same thing we've been saying. science fiction is actually scientific fact. All these things that they made to make us believe doesn't actually exist or isn't real is actually, way more imminent than you and me could even fathom about. But it makes even more sense to why they're saying that Nibiru is a fake planet, or it's just Planet X, or it's unknown, or it's just some conspiracy theory, because they don't want you to actually know what the actual definition of that planet actually is, or where the origin of that planet is, who's on that planet. They don't want you to know any of that information, because God forbid, all pun intended there, God forbid for them that you actually turn to your original gods and realize where you came from and start to see people for what they actually are. And what do I mean by people for what they actually are is humanoids are actually among us. Okay, so there's this thing where people were saying, oh, the lizard people or reptilians or actually our politicians and reptilians are who run the world and things like that, right? Reptilian this, reptilian that, everybody's a reptilian, right? So even that was said to be conspiracy theory. So we just broke down how the Anunnaki pretty much debunks majority of those conspiracy theories, as well as it debunks majority of the Bible. If you look at the story of the Anunnaki, as we just heard, right? So if the Anunnaki debunks the Bible, let us now debunk reptilians. Okay, so reptilians, humanoid reptilians, are said to be among us, right? Now, of course, you can't actually see them because they're supposedly manipulation of our actual mind. But there are instances where these reptilians actually glitch. So, like I said, it could sound as far-fetched as as it might be in your head, but what if I was to tell you that there are actually plenty examples of these humanoid reptilians out there, and you guys just haven't paid attention to them over the years? So, why don't we start with Justin Bieber? There was a whole big hoax about, or should I say, there's a whole big thing about him being reptilian himself, where fans had said they have seen him change into a reptilian at an airport. Let me see if I can find the actual article here. So this comes from Teen Vogue, for example, right? Justin Bieber may have transformed into a giant reptile, hundreds of fans allege. Justin Bieber, no doubt, has many inviolable talents, but his coolest one by far. If it is at all true, his alleged ability to turn into an enormous lizard at will, well, that's it. Well, that's if you believe a headline reportedly published earlier on the Australian website Perth Now, after hundreds of Australian fans reportedly witnessed him in his reptilian glory. It says BuzzFeed was the first to discover this disquieting news article, which has been since removed from the site, ironically, that, like I said, Justin Bieber, hundreds of fans claim they saw, look at this. I'll bring it up for you. Hundreds of fans claim they saw Justin Bieber turn into a giant reptile. Now, after what we've just looked at and after what we just read, no. Does that sound a little bit far-fetched? Okay, maybe. Justin Bieber turning into a reptile. Yeah, okay, sounds far-fetched. Well, how then do you explain this?
Ready?
Remember that arraignment video and everyone was talking about his eyes had changed?
All right, the first case this afternoon is Justin Bieber. Mr. Bieber,
Gang,
you are
what up?
charged with the following: DUI, alcohol, or drugs. Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the All right, the first case this afternoon is Justin Bieber. Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following. All right, the first case this afternoon is Justin Bieber. Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following.
Now, this is live CBS News here. So there were some people that actually had caught this in real time and said, wait, what the fuck did I just witness? Justin Bieber's eyes just did a whole change and slit. Now, this was following the same exact story that we just read about him changing into a giant reptile.
DUI, alcohol, or drugs. Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following. DUI, Justin Bieber. Mr. Bieber, you are charged with the following. DUI.
Now, there were many videos that actually started to circulate after that had happened, because quite a lot of people were pretty much shocked at what they'd actually witnessed. And some people were saying, oh, maybe it was a TV glitch, it was just that and the third. But, of course, like I said, how do you explain the giant reptile at the Australian airport on top of this video showing up right after that? And then years later down the line, he says that he somehow has
Hey everyone,
disorder.
Justin here.
Now, I'm no brain surgeon. I'm no doctor. But does that look like some type of disorder, or does that not look like a glitch happening to you? I'm thinking about the Men in Black when Edgar's eyes started to twitch and he lost his pupils.
Hey everyone, Justin here.
That is an entire glitch happening in someone's face. So supposedly this is the Ramsay Hunt syndrome, but as you clearly saw in the other videos, there was no Ramsay Hunt syndrome when his face started to glitch.
Hey everyone, Justin here. I wanted to update you guys on what's been going on. Obviously, as you can probably see from my face, I have this syndrome called Ramsay.
He could barely even figure out what the hell it actually is. That's the whole thing. They literally made up a syndrome because Justin literally can't stop glitching. He literally cannot stop glitching in his face. So even the MK Ultra that's used to keep him, from the fans noticing him has seemed to have worn off and does not work anymore. Thus why he hasn't been able to tour. That's the true reason why Justin hasn't been able to tour. It's because that glitch is starting to affect him as far as people seeing that reptile. Now, Justin isn't the only one that has had these setbacks as far as changing on live television. So, I wanted to bring a couple of other examples of when this might have happened. Who remembers when Jimmy Johnson was on the Super Bowl? And this happened. Reptilian race Draco, Jimmy Johnson. And this is the live of when it happened at the Super Bowl. If you notice right now, you can even see the slit in his left eye. You can easily see the slit right there in his left eye. Now, this was during a live broadcast, and I remember freaking the fuck out when I first saw it, because I said to myself, did anyone else just notice that? His entire face structure started to change and bulge out. around that eye. This was, like I said, on live television, to where his eye started to slit. He lost his entire pupil. And his reptilian form started to show. Now, of course, some of you are probably saying maybe this is an edited video. So I'll look at another video for you guys, in which this one shows you a close-up of someone watching their TV. This is literally someone watching their TV and witnessing the same thing you and I did. Now, as you can see, the eyeball has now went back blue. But watch. You can literally see the slit and the difference in the eyes. See it? Then it turns back blue. But then the slit was still there. He literally couldn't hide that slit being there. That's why he kept twitching. And then he kept trying to shake it off, but it wasn't going away. See? His eyes went back when he shook it off. But there was a clear distinction between those bright blue eyes and this. That reptilian slit he could not stop from happening. Yes, lyricists, just like Katy Perry. So I'll give you another example of reptilians similar to what happened to Katy Perry. Think about what happened to Queen Elizabeth.
Match was held in Windsor this weekend, with the monarch herself in attendance, despite sporting an extremely bloodshot left eye.
Bloodshot my ass.
Queen's Cup final polo match was held in Windsor this weekend, with the monarch herself in attendance, despite sporting an extremely bloodshot.
Does that look like a bloodshot eye to you? Now, again, this wouldn't be the first time that the Queen was even accused of supposedly being a reptilian. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard the rumors about, rest in peace, the Queen Elizabeth being from a different life form altogether. There's videos of her hand showing disformation. There's videos like this. There's the videos of her teeth being super sharp. We're talking about the woman here who was behind, allegedly, Princess Diana passing away. There are many, and I mean many, instances of evil when it comes to Queen Elizabeth. So if anybody was to be possibly reptilian, my guess and I would definitely bet it to be her. But again, the buck doesn't stop there. So we got Jimmy Johnson, we got Justin Bieber. What about all the other times that supposedly someone has, glitched out on camera? Have a couple instances where people have glitched out on camera. Now, I implore you guys, if you get a chance, go definitely watch Dark Matter, because Dark Matter actually has a few videos to where people are literally glitching out on live television. And it's something that you just can't get around.
In the last 30 years, a fantastical conspiracy theory has become increasingly popular. One that may be the most ridiculous out there, or the most incredible. Supposedly, a network of reptilian creatures have infiltrated the world's government, media, and entertainment industry. So, from the mysterious identity of Michael Brownlee to the potential real appearance of the Bushes, join us. Out of all supposed reptilian anomalies, the most popular relate to the eyes. On multiple occasions, news anchors have seemed to accidentally reveal a second set of eyes. In an interview with Wolf Blitzer, CNN correspondent Brian Todd was filmed blinking furiously before viewers noticed a flash of hidden pupils.
Yeah, what about the cost, Brian? Is that at all a consideration?
It's a big consideration. Just about every former officer I spoke with says the cost of outfitting each combat troop with a tracking device is one of the main reasons they don't have them right now.
So when you speak with...
But others say if they can deal with the cost and pay for all of this, it is worth it not only to track missing troops.
Though skeptics have suggested that this is nothing more than video compression, others have questioned why the error only sticks to the eyes, rather than the entire frame. Bizarrely, the onset of blinking before the reveal of the second eyes appears to be a common occurrence. Both Fox News journalist Sharon Breams and this unidentified Spanish reporter have suffered similar issues. So could the truth be in the eyes? On a standard edition of the Fox-owned KKTV, an LA-based reporter reads the latest story about celebrities. Yet once more, the anchor starts to transform, until, unheard by the audience, the producers scream at her to stop presenting. The camera then cuts to someone else, and when it returns, the reporter is back to normal.
The Globe asked a doctor to assess certain celebrities' risk factors and make her analysis. For example, she says, it appears Britney is suffering from a major psychological disorder and that it might actually be bipolar. Could be that. The doc then predicts how much longer they'll live. Sick, I know, but I also know you want to hear what she has to say. The doc says if these people...
As you can see here, she told it to turn her head. The reason why she was turning her head, you can literally look at her entire face started to bump up and glitch out. And she was starting to realize that the producers in the back were yelling at her, hey, something's going on with your fucking face. Can we pan the camera off you? Stop presenting. Shut up for a second.
Don't get help or straighten up fast. I haven't...
And she kept glitching.
...read any of this. Britney won't make it to the age 30. Lindsay won't see 20...
Does that look like... I don't know. Does that look like your TV's messing up to you? That looks like someone's face is literally breaking out or just glitching out right in front of you.
25, and Michael Jackson has no more than 5 years left. At the other end...
And then it got really bad to where she started to look damn near clean on.
Angelina's going to have a long, healthy life, and so will George.
Then it got really bad to where she damn near transformed on live television, and the cameraman pretty much had to just pan away from this entire ordeal.
George Bush and Nicole Richie.
If you're not already...
As you can see right here, the confusion on the young lady's face right after, she noticed that she was glitching out. She couldn't understand what she was witnessing, but she noticed that she was glitching out.
I hear yelling in the booth. Are they yelling at me?
I hear yelling in the booth. Are they yelling at me? Yes, they're yelling at you.
Wait, I read that?
You did great. Okay. But if you're not...
Excuse me.
I could hear Lisa yelling
Give her a break. She didn't read it earlier. She doesn't know the story.
Yelling at me for the way I read that?
You did great.
Okay.
But if you're not...
Excuse me.
Look at that. Even he started to get it. Hey, something happened right just now. We can't say what happened just now, but yeah.
Hear Lisa yelling.
Give her a break. She didn't read it earlier. She doesn't know the story. It's okay. Just stop it. She's okay.
I could hear you.
Yeah. Some expert who doesn't know any of them making comments on how long they're lived than we did on Iraq today, okay?
Are you trying to make me feel bad?
I don't have to.
You're right.
Interestingly, throughout this clip, viewers have claimed to hear the anchor both hiss and make a slight guttural sound off camera. However, skeptics maintain that since the anchor's clothes appear to transform as well, this all but confirms it's a technical error. Believers though dismiss this, arguing that the clothes are part of the disguise. Regardless, she isn't the only Fox News reporter to allegedly transform into a reptilian. And
well, notice how it's also Fox News. I'll just leave that there, if you will. notice how it's also Fox News that it happens to.
Atlanta branch of the network, fellow news anchor Dale Russell displayed a similar transformation.
Now, again, we want to stress from what we observed and what the sheriff says, a small number of motorcyclists are causing all of the problems. But the problems are serious. Emergency responses are stretched thin. Weekends are spent cleaning up motorcycle wrecks by the sheriff's deputies, and some tourists and locals say the speeders have taken over. Now, we mentioned last night stories go around the mountains about the winner-take-all races. Well, the owner of the website who advertises those races told me
So either Fox has a pretty shitty cameraman or pretty shitty technology, or the same exact thing that was happening to that other news anchor is starting to happen to this gentleman, to where they are glitching out on camera. But then you have to ask yourselves, why isn't it happening to the other newscasters and it's just happening to this guy on the camera? He is transforming and shapeshifting live on television.
it's all just a joke. He says it doesn't really happen. He says he put them on his website just to annoy the local sheriff, Russ. And they basically are saying some of the same things over and over here, and other people cause problems, the bicyclists, the cars that you see going over the double yellow lines, not staying in their lane. And some have acknowledged to me that, yeah, these guys...
And then they tried to pan back to him, but then it got bad again. As you can see, if we look close, the other cameraman started to say, hey,
This has told me it's all just a joke. He says it doesn't really happen. He says he put them on his website just...
You see this guy's face? He's like, oh, this doesn't look too good.
To annoy the local sheriff, Russ. And they basically are saying some of the same things over and over here, and other people cause problems. The bicyclists, the cars that you see going over the double yellow lines, not staying in their lane. And some have acknowledged to me that, yeah, these guys are driving really fast, but the ones that are really causing the problems are the inexperienced drivers getting up there on powerful bikes that they're really not ready to drive yet. And that's...
Again, notice how it only happens to the guy, but it doesn't happen to the other newscasters.
kind of the main thing that we're hearing from them.
Further, in what is likely just a coincidence, but an odd one nonetheless, Russell shares the same name with Dale Russell, a paleontologist who theorized that if dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct, they would have eventually evolved into this humanoid creature. As seen, this life form has the appearance of a typical reptilian. Is it therefore possible that the name is a knowing joke? Bizarrely, it seems that many Fox anchors are alleged to be reptilians. One in particular, Michael Brownlee, a former reporter for the LA branch, has a history of potentially transforming, a point that seemingly rejects the theory it's due to compression issues. However, the most infamous transformation came when the cameraman, apparently aware of Brownlee's emerging real form, turned the camera away for no reason.
Now, we talk about the mother's arrest, but the mother says that her 16-year-old daughter, the victim in this case, was also arrested here back on September 18th. Now, keep in mind, this is the family story, their account of what they see happened here on campus earlier this month. Unfortunately, we weren't able to reach the school district for comment, but keep in mind, a mother and daughter baffled over how a celebration with cake...
Notice how he had to leave the camera. He left the camera because it got so bad on that left side that his entire face was literally starting to change and he couldn't stop it. Even the skin started to change on his nose. And he couldn't do anything about that one.
Whilst promoting her book, Jenna Bush, daughter of former US President George W. Bush, appeared to constantly shapeshift. Further, viewers noted that the anchors interviewing Jenna attempted to let her know of this mistake, repeatedly discussing how she'd changed.
Talking with teenagers and students about Anna and the other kids I met in Latin America, and so far it's been really inspiring.
And not unpleasant. I mean,
Well, we'll change all that.
No, we're not going to change it.
Don't change it, please.
We will not change it. We will not.
She obviously hasn't seen the show.
People have been nice, and they're not attacking your dad or his policies to you.
Well, I met with my job. I worked for UNICEF, which is an amazing organization that works in over 150 countries. And my job was to meet with teenagers who were living in exclusion, who were living in extreme poverty or living with HIV and
The skin looks like it literally starts to scale up and the person's nose even starts to deform into the reptilian look. Yes, it does look like something out of Species lyricist. I definitely think of Men in Black there, like I said. But the thing is, when it comes to shapeshifters, they're not necessarily in like the Edgar zip up on the skin form. They're more like this. And the whole reason why their face starts to glitch out is because the manipulation that you're starting to see, that you had originally seen, is starting to wear off. And they can't actually, they can't stop that from happening. Sometimes it just actually happens to where they start to glitch out and the reptilian form starts to actually show in front of people. And that's why they're able to wear it off and their skin just goes right back to normal. It's because the reason why it's a shapeshifter, it's manipulation of the human mind. You're actually seeing a real person with real skin that looks like you and me, but underneath that actual vessel and shell would be this creature here.
Their stories, listen to their stories and write them for UNICEF. And so,
hers got terrible.
Obviously learned so much from
hers. Got so bad. Like, I don't even understand why the cameraman started to keep this one on. Hers got ridiculous.
These kids. I learned from Anna in particular, who has lived an extremely difficult life. I learned...
she literally transformed back into her reptilian form right in front of us.
To live each day to its fullest.
Doing any kind of missionary work, I think, really changes a person. And you and your sister had a little bit, you guys weren't Paris Hilton, but you had a little bit of a reputation as party girls. Do you think this changed you?
So it didn't change my personality necessarily, but I taught for 2 years after the University of Texas after graduating, and then went on to Latin America. And of course, I've grown up. It's been 7 years since people had that image of me. But yeah, listening to their stories was incredible. And
Jetta, when you see this, when you not only listen to their stories, but you get involved and you write about it as well, does it change how you look, you're thinking about how government should run?
Still, Jenna isn't the only alleged reptilian in the Bush family. In one interview, her grandfather and fellow President George Bush Sr. seemed to transform for a split second. As noted, his pupil briefly became slate, whilst his eye itself looked green.
In Colombo in Sri Lanka, it's full. You literally, I don't know how they're going to get all the crates.
Could this prove that the Bushes are reptilians? And if so, does this mean that similar creatures have been running the US government? What do you think?
Well, I think this, right? I think we have enough proof here, and if this isn't going to be the icing on the cake for you guys, I have here a clip of the lady Zana, who is said to be an actual extraterrestrial herself, and from the planet, get this, Nibiru, and is said to be Anunnaki. Now, this is in Russian, so of course you can't hear what's being said, but watch for yourselves here.
Жан, по просьбе наших друзей, моргни, пожалуйста. Не так. Моргни. Спасибо. Надеюсь, вы...
I'll slow it down for you in case you didn't catch it. It's about the 14-second mark where it happens. But her eyes literally go into slits. If you want, you can big it up. But it's called the Russian woman Zana with alien eyes. Now, if you look up Zana, just Zhana, you'll literally see nothing but videos of her and Anunnaki. Videos of the gentleman next to her, saying, "Hey, do you want to tell the reporter where we come from, or what the purpose of humans are?" That's literally what her interviews are about, is her being an extraterrestrial. And there's numerous videos and occasions to where her eyes do that on purpose. She isn't trying to hide it at all. She lets people know up front, hey, I'm a fucking alien. So, again, if you wanted to know if reptilians or humanoids or shapeshifters are real or not, you look no further than these videos here. There is many, and I mean many, examples of these shapeshifters and them changing right in front of you. There's actually an interview. I wish I could have found it on YouTube, but I probably have to dig through my archives in my email because I saved the Illuminati wife that they took down. I noticed they was going to take down the Illuminati wife one day, and she was whistleblowing basically all the CIA information. But anyway, there's actually a video of an interview where there are two shapeshifters in the interview that they've taken down recently. And in the interview, they actually demonstrate how they're able to shapeshift in front of people, and they do a very similar thing to where you saw what was happening with the newscasters, and their faces were glitching out and whatnot. They do a very similar thing to that, basically. But they go all the way into it, and the camera kind of stays on them, and you actually see the actual transformation. But like I said, I have to go into my actual archives to find that video for you guys. Now, there are other instances of when someone was said to be an alien, okay? So let's think about Obama's supposed security, right? Or actually, let's look at this anchor here.
And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. What happened to
Someone mentioned earlier Katy Perry, right? This is the Katy Perry syndrome.
Erin Burnett's eye? New tonight, the anchorwoman's eye looked infected, half open and swollen, and she was in obvious distress during her CNN show last night. Erin tried to mask the problem by looking down and turning to an extreme profile. Her guests expressed sympathy.
And by the way, your eye doesn't look
forces, and protecting the population and minimizing civilian casualties have long been a cornerstone of the counterinsurgency doctrine. Have long been a cornerstone of the counterinsurgency doctrine. Civilian casualties have long been a cornerstone of the counterinsurgency doctrine.
Again, many examples of it, but there was also this Secret Service agent that was supposedly to be Obama's security at one point. He's actually been around for quite some time now, but I want to show you this here. This is supposedly Obama's alien security guard, and this made headlines so bad that they literally had to take this down from quite a few different places. I know YouTube does not play this video at all. Like, this video got banned, and the channel actually got terminated in the original article from what I've seen. But take a look at this one right here, for example.
Conspiracy theorists have hit a new high after again accusing the White House of hiding evidence of aliens, this time right out in public. While President Obama was recently...
And in fact, let me take myself down for just a second. That way you guys can see it a little bit easier.
Speaking to a US-Israeli cooperation group, one of his bodyguards was spied on video looking a bit odd.
A series of odd features on his head, face, plus a very strange behavior and creepy movements. Suggest something else.
Suggest what exactly?
Is he an actual reptilian humanoid? Is he one of the Anunnaki? Is he a tall grey bio-android, or what?
Well, with that creepy colour filter, who could argue?
But due the low lighting in half the amphitheater, he would pass unnoticed or regarded as a normal human being by the crowd.
Unnoticed except maybe by all the TV cameras. Though unable to discuss the identity of Secret Service agents, the White House has responded in kind. National Security Council official Caitlin Hayden remarked that any alien security programs were most probably cut during the recent sequester. She also suggested that Area
But his entire ear left.
51 should be consulted for further information. Conspiracy theorists were quick to point out that that wasn't exactly a denial.
Did his shape-shifting device fail during Obama's speech, in the middle of an amphitheater crowded with people?
Or has the outer edge of the internet struck again? Dallas Baird for News Limited.
Like I said, you literally saw where his ear was completely gone on his skull. And his mouth had completely left. Lips gone, ear gone. Now, here's a video of that same exact kid, or should I say same exact kid, excuse me, same exact security guard.
Look at this video that's sweeping the internet. It's the
He's obviously got some type of thing going on with his hand there, but the hand almost looks fake. So people thought he had a fake hand. Of course, he's a Secret Service agent walking with Trump. So you're thinking, hey, of course, he's got probably... Oh, I didn't realize that article was still there. Come on. Come up. Thank you. So, like I said, he's walking there, and you think he's got a fake hand or whatever. But, of course, you think Secret Service agent, he's got a fake hand. He's probably got a gun underneath that hand, right? Well, keep watching.
Parade held in Washington last week. Check out the Secret Service agent. His hand isn't moving. To some observers, it seems to be a prosthetic hand, known as a tactical fake arm. Is it possible that his real hand is holding a gun tucked inside his coat? That's what some are saying. However, some people are debunking the theory, citing moments like this, when the agent appears to move his hands and later closes the limousine door. His fingers are clearly moving.
So, was that a fake hand? Or was that a humanoid hand starting to act up? And furthermore, that guy looked pretty damn tall if you ask me. He looked pretty damn tall, Nephilim tall if you ask me. But see, this is the thing that, like I said, would be dismissed as far-fetched or, as was said earlier, science fiction. Yes, the bloodlines are very real. The bloodlines are very real. And it would seem that these bloodlines, lead all the way back to the reptilian race. Now, there's said to be a cave. I think I have. Oh, there's even another one right here. I forgot. You alive? And this is supposed to be a rocker. Look, a rocker shows his reptilian eyes in Paris. Pretty much, this happened in 2017. And as you clearly saw, he was regular before that. But then all of a sudden, again, we can't hide these guys. We can't hide this. Now, there's supposed to be this cave called Sun Dung, which is supposed to be the largest cave in the world. But get this largest cave in the world is actually home to the reptilians. Now, I'm not making this up, but now I can't, of course, play this actual clip. So I'm going to show you what the actual cave looks like as they're talking about it here. But this clip actually comes from the History Channel. So that's why. But this is actually the Song Dung Cave, where they are said to be the reptilians and other humanoids like it. It looks like something out of Star Wars. It looks like something out of what's that movie? Avatar. That's what I think of when I see this cave. And I notice if you think about all the science fiction video games. Have you noticed that a lot of them always come up to these types of caves that looks very similar to this? Now, like I said, I'm gonna play this clip here. History Channel, of course, will copyright me, so.
Longer Hokan discovered Quang Binh Province, Vietnam. 1991. Longer Hokan discovers a mysterious entrance to a hidden mountain cave obscured by dense jungle overgrowth. The cliffs leading down to the entrance are so steep he cannot explore it further, but he notes its location. Nearly 2 decades later, the British Cave Research Association finally explores the cave. What the team discovers is astounding. It is the largest underground chamber on the planet.
It's not just a cave. It's an actual world in Vietnam. Inside this cave, it's 40 stories high. There's actually an ancient forest. It's got flowing water, not just a puddle or a stream, but an actual river. Inside the cave is an entire growing ecosystem. And it's so deep that it looks like it's an entrance to a whole other reality.
This incredible subterranean realm, called the Son Doong Cave, is estimated to be roughly 3 million years old. It runs through the earth for nearly 6 miles, and numerous areas where the cave ceiling has collapsed allow sunlight to enter, resulting in the growth of trees and other vegetation. But according to area residents, what's most notable about Son Doong Cave are the strange creatures that are believed to dwell within it.
Local residents describe seeing reptilian-type humanoid beings emerging from the Son Doong Cave, and they believe that they actually live deep inside this cave. What's fascinating about this is that these reptilian-type humanoid beings are similar to the seraphim or the winged serpents in Kabbalistic tradition. The seraphim are said to have gone and lived in the inner earth, according to Kabbalistic teaching.
Is it possible that reports of reptilians at Son Doong Cave are encounters with beings from inner Earth? While it may sound too incredible to be true, there have been reports that during the Vietnam War in the 1970s, U.S. soldiers encountered what they described as upright lizards inhabiting caves. And accounts of reptilian beings existing in underground caverns can be found all across the globe, even on the other side of the world, in Cusco, Peru.
Throughout Peru and around Cusco particularly, there are many, many stories of a tunnel system that has something to do with serpent deities, which they call the Amaru there. The Peruvian authorities themselves decided it was too dangerous for people to go into these tunnels, so they looked for all of the entrances they could around Cusco, and they sealed them up. And this is a well-known story within Peruvian history.
While there have been many reports from around the world of human-like reptilians, there is another inner Earth entity described in the Zohar that is even more commonly witnessed in modern times.
According to Zoharic literature, there are beings inside the earth having large black eyes and a nose that leaves only 2 dark holes on the face. Now that corresponds to things that we've heard about these, for lack of a better word, ETs. There is a lot of evidence that these beings that we think are coming from another planet are not coming from another planet. They're coming from inside our own Earth.
The black-eyed entities, commonly referred to as greys by ufologists, are the beings most often reported by alleged alien abductees, many of whom claim to have been taken aboard saucer-shaped craft. Could it be that the so-called flying saucers, so often reported in modern times, are not coming from outer space, but inner Earth. According to some ancient astronaut theorists, this notion is supported by numerous accounts of UFOs that are seen disappearing into the landscape, and sometimes even flying directly into mountains.
Now, of course, who better to explain, in my opinion, who better to explain the reptilians better than whistleblower David Icke? Now, David Icke has been whistleblowing about reptilians and them being among us in our government for quite some time now, of course. So I wanted to share with you guys David Icke and his thoughts on the whole conspiracy.
For as long as I can remember, I've had an interest in what some people condescendingly term conspiracy theory. You see, I was born November 22nd, the anniversary of John F. Kennedy.
And David Icke has been around for quite some time. He's been down since I want to say what's his name? Trying to think of his name now. Alex Jones. He's been around since around the days of Alex Jones, actually. David Icke, and he's always talked about the lizard people and the apocalypse.
David Icke, Britain's leading conspiracy evangelist and the one man standing between us and total enslavement.
Hey! Kev,
Mr.
nice
Icke.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good trip?
Yes, it was.
Welcome to my abode. There's not much to see, but I like it.
What do we got here?
Well, this is things that I've collected over the years. This is fantastic. Someone in
a turquoise tracksuit, he'd announced.
And then I came across with this stuff, and it was
Get
like,
it out of the way
don't
early
mention
on.
the reptiles. They'll just laugh at you again. I said, I know, but I've seen enough and heard enough to believe that it's real, and so I say it. I don't care about the consequences for me. Are you frightened? No, I'm not. I don't care, because the consequences for the world and my children and my grandchildren and everyone else's of humans not intervening in this process that's going on now ever more quickly, are that we are condemning our children and grandchildren, indeed ourselves. It's that close to a world that George Orwell so massively understated.
Can we have a look at where the work gets
Yes.
done, where
Like
it
everything
all
that-
happens?
This is where it all happens, and as you can see, it's really small.
It is really small.
Because, I look at my life, and I don't see my life as a life anymore. I haven't for a while. I see it as a job.
So this is the new one.
Yeah, this is
in
the
German?
this is the German version, isn't it? Because
Now, I noticed that this guy pretty much kept taking his thoughts off of the conspiracy, but
this is their altar, yeah.
Here we go.
And what they're doing, it's horrible, but let's get the truth out. What they're doing is manipulating the sacrifice. The sacrifice knows the sacrifice is coming, and who's going to help them? Look,
right
at midnight or something. No one. And what they then do is they sacrifice the victim, and they drink the blood immediately, which has this chemical substance in it, and they go crazy. I mean, I've talked to people who've been at these rituals, and how once the sacrifice happens and the blood runs, these people go crazy with blood.
So he's basically harping on the whole theory about humanoids, or should I say reptilians, eating people and them consuming blood, or should I say vampires. You know how they have the thing with vampires? That's really where vampires even came from. It was really a derivative of the actual reptilians and them feeding off of human blood. The human blood actually is what they use to stay youthful, pretty much, and continue to live on for hundreds of thousands of years. It's a nasty way of doing things, but I want to, before it gets too late, I did want to share with you guys the main reason why we're here and why we call this Star Wars. So, of course, none of this now sounds far-fetched to you guys. I'm pretty sure it hasn't for quite some time, as far as, reptilians and the Anunnaki, right? So now that we have a good understanding of who they are both collectively, I wanted to share with you guys, like I said, the meat and potatoes here, which is the moon has a dark secret. And this gentleman has a channel called the Y-Files. I implore you guys to definitely go check out the Y-Files when you get a chance, because he has a lot, and I mean a lot, that I'm probably going to be binge watching myself. And do not mind the goldfish. The goldfish actually cracks some pretty good nerd jokes, but do not mind his goldfish. His goldfish, of course, to some of you, to the older audience, it might throw you off a little bit, but don't mind the goldfish.
This episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by the military online game.
I'm going to just skip ahead here to the beginning of it and past the ads.
Milk. The oldest recorded history comes from ancient Sumerian texts, and that's where we're first introduced to the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are believed to be 7 deities, also referred to as the 7 gods who decree. Their purpose was to determine the fate of mankind, and their stories mirror some that we find in Greek mythology. And like the Greek gods, the Anunnaki dwell in the heavens, but also interact with people and influence events here on Earth. Gods from polytheistic religions like the Anunnaki, the Greek gods, and the Roman gods served many purposes. They were used to explain natural phenomena like Zeus creating thunderstorms. Thor also served this role in Norse mythology. The gods provided comfort about the uncertainties of life and questions about mortality, the afterlife, and human suffering. Gods and their myths established social norms and values. Myths often included lessons about the virtues of honesty, courage, and wisdom, or the danger of hubris and deceit. Worshipping gods who represent these qualities creates a framework for social and moral order. Gods are part of the creation myth of many cultures, used to explain the origin of mankind. This was also true for the ancient Sumerians. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, written thousands of years ago, the Anunnaki are directly involved in the creation of humans. However, the stories about the Anunnaki might not be myths. The stories might be history. Zecharia Sitchin, in his book The 12th Planet, claims the Anunnaki are actually aliens who visited Earth thousands of years ago from their home planet Nibiru. When they arrived, the deity called Enki added alien DNA to ancient man, and the result was us. The intention was to create a slave species to mine gold for the Anunnaki. The gold was refined and used in terraforming their home planet, which was suffering from a poisoned atmosphere. Now, this may sound like a far-fetched story to some, Not to me. but this creation story shows up in other cultures as well. There's an ancient Zulu legend about 2 brothers named Wawani and Mpanku, who were from an alien race with scaly skin. Thousands of years ago, the brothers stole an egg from a fire dragon, emptied out the yolk until it was hollow, and then rolled it across the sky to Earth. That egg was the moon. Many ancient texts describe a time when the moon didn't exist, or at least it didn't exist here.
So isn't that something right there? You literally just heard how the moon was even created. Okay? It started out as just a little tiny egg, and then, boom. I'll run it back for you guys in case you didn't get it, because that was pretty quick.
That egg was the moon. Thousands of years ago, the brothers stole an egg from a fire dragon, emptied out the yolk until it was hollow, and then rolled it across the sky to Earth. That egg was the moon.
Interesting theory to how the moon actually was created, huh?
Many ancient texts describe a time when the moon didn't exist, or at least it didn't exist here. Aristotle wrote about the Pelasgians, who lived in ancient Greece since the oldest days, at a time before the moon. Apollonius of Rhodes also talks about a time when the moon wasn't yet in the sky.
In ages past, before the silver orb adorned night's somber shroud, Gaia stood alone. The tides lay still, untouched by Luna's grasp, and darkness reigned where moonlight never cast its tranquil spell. Oh, how the gods conspired to shape that radiant disk.
Greek historian Plutarch wrote about the Arcadians. They were a very ancient people who lived in Greece. Plutarch described them as a pre-lunar people. Roman poet Ovid also wrote about the Arcadians.
In Arcadia's lush fields, where Pan's flute sang, "A truth lies hidden, nearly forgot by man." The Arcadians are said to have possessed their land before the birth of Zeus, and the folk is older than the moon.
Evidence of a sky with no moon has also been found on the other side of the world. In the ancient site of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, there are symbols that depict the moon coming into orbit. And this happened at a specific moment in time thousands of years ago, long before recorded history. According to the Zulu and other ancient cultures, the moon didn't form. The moon was built, and not built here. The Zulus say that the moon was built in another part of the galaxy by the alien race that Wawani and Mpanku came from. They built the moon as a monitoring station to keep an eye on us, the human race. But what kind of aliens are depicted in these old legends? They're not the small gray aliens. The aliens that built the moon are reptilian.
Lizard people?
Yep, lizard people.
Lizard.
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 Better.
So, as you heard, this is where the whole Anunnaki versus reptilians start to come into play. Because the reptilians are the ones who have said to are the inhabitants of the moon and the creators necessarily on the moon. And this whole thing about the watchers and keepers over us originally were the reptilians. Anunnaki, of course, but the reptilians were on the moon.
Let's go!
David Icke has written over 20 books about various conspiracy theories. He's covered everything from the Illuminati to UFOs to the multiverse.
He's my hero.
But he's probably best known for his theory about a humanoid reptilian race.
Well, it's not a theory if it's true.
Do you mind?
Sorry. Lizard people get me really excited.
Oh, I know.
Oh, did you know you can buy a Lizard People coffee mug from the iFile store?
No merch plugs, please. Icke claims that humans share the Earth with a race of shape-shifting reptilian humanoids called the Archons. Wawani and Mpanku, the brothers from the Zulu legend who brought the moon to Earth, were Archons. The Sumerians called these Archon brothers Enki and Enlil, who were also rulers of the Anunnaki. This race of reptilians primarily lives underground, but a few of them live among us as well. The surface-dwelling beings are here to make sure humanity stays compliant with and unaware of their plan. They're involved in the highest levels of government, business, and technology. They're monarchs, politicians, and bankers. They own and operate major media companies.
Mark, are the allegations true that you're secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no on that. I am not a lizard.
Considering Mark's makeup, considering the times that he's had slits in his eyes as well, considering the actual live, I didn't even think to pull it up actually, to where he was even in court and his eyes did the slit. You can look at Mark Zuckerberg and tell he has some type of amphibian thing going on with his entire makeup. You can literally say that about Mark Zuckerberg. That's not even a joke. You can literally look at Mark Zuckerberg and say amphibian, which would derivative be from reptiles, of course. But anyway, think about the fact that Mark Zuckerberg is one of the first people to also buy the bomb bunker, right? If you thought about him getting the bunker over in Hawaii, and he's already underground, he's already in subterranean dwelling. And of course, in a nice climate like Hawaii, very chameleon-like, wouldn't it be?
They influence every aspect of human life. They are the Illuminati. When we describe the reptilians as shapeshifters, you might think of a creature that physically changes its shape, like Odo from Star Trek, Mystique from Marvel Comics, or Tonks from Harry Potter. Reptilians don't do this. They actually always look like themselves. What they do is manipulate the human brain to perceive them differently. The source of the reptilians' power is their ability to alter our perception of reality. And they don't do this with telepathy, they do this with technology. According to David Icke, the moon is not only a spacecraft, but also a holographic projection device. The broadcasts from the moon warp our reality, or at least our perception of reality.
Which would make a lot more sense to why it's plain white. And if you think about how, what's the best wall to play movie projection on. It's usually a white wall, right? That's not by coincidence. That's by design that it's like that. When we're talking about holographic projections, how many times have people said to you, yo, that moon look like it's glitching out? Or give you another example. The face by the moon we saw. You can't tell me that ain't a hologram.
There's what's known as a frequency embargo around the Earth.
Wait. Who enforces this embargo?
Well, there's a bunch of alien races who are part of a galactic federation, and they keep an eye on the reptilians, but it's a whole thing.
Go on, I got time.
No, it needs its own video.
She got me all...
So you heard that though, right? There's pretty much a few different people, or a few different species, I should say, that are in guard of the reptilians. So it sounds like it's almost like something straight out of a movie here, where these reptilians are pretty much obsessed with world domination and power, and they've figured out how to obtain that on Earth through manipulating and enslaving us through currency. If you really want to think about it, reptilians have enslaved us through currency because of our original makeup of our origin system of working. Remember, back in the days, we were still workers for the Anunnaki. So they basically took the same DNA makeup system and implemented it inside of Earth with money and currency, something that we were going to need and want to survive and live and have all these luxurious things and so on and so forth. So it makes a lot more sense when I'm hearing that there are more species that were supposedly in guard of the reptilians. There were species that were literally watching out for them, saying, okay, these guys might go from planet to planet on some domination shit. So we need to... These reptilians pretty much have a Napoleon complex to them, needless to say.
Excited! This is a bunch of bullshit.
There is much more to reality than we can perceive with our senses, and the human brain is quite capable of experiencing the true universe. In fact, it was specifically designed to do so. But the frequencies that would allow us to see the real world are being blocked. Instead, we're locked into the simple three-dimensional existence, but there is much more being withheld from us. If you believe in simulation theory, then these beings are the creators of the simulation. If you're religious, then these beings are demons or jinn. Either way, they're not our friends. But why? Why would an advanced race want to keep humans oblivious to the real world? Well, when humans were first created, the alien creators learned something. All other animals on Earth are driven by instinct. The instinct to eat, to survive, to reproduce, and that's about it. But when the first humans were given sentience, a byproduct of that sentience was emotion. Sure, humans are still driven by instinct. We're driven to survive and reproduce like every other animal.
Ugh, and I got the guppy support payments to prove it. Oof,
But because humans are now aware of themselves and their existence, they experience the world differently. They experience...
In other words, if you remember back The Matrix, right? Remember The Matrix, I believe it was Revelations. Ironically, it was called Revelations. The third one, right? Where Neo is talking to the architect. Now, a lot of people, of course, probably fell asleep. Like, okay, maybe I fell asleep probably maybe the first 2 times I watched it, right? But in that actual conversation, if you really pay attention, the architect simply asks Neo, yo, what is the systematic problem to the Matrix? And Neo figured it out. The problem is choice. The systematic problem to the Matrix in our reality is actually choice. So what he's talking about with the fact that reptilians harp on our energy and our negative energy, they harp on the fact that we are emotionally driven by choice. So the fact that we're emotionally driven by choice, by DNA makeup, that was easier for us to be enslaved and want the currency of money.
Experience fear of the future. Humans experience the pleasure of nostalgia for the past. No other animal has this gift or this curse. Animals kill for survival, but humans kill out of hate. Our alien creators learned that our emotions carry energy, and the creators learned that this energy can be consumed for nourishment. Unfortunately for us, negative emotions are the most nourishing of all. Some have described the alien desire for negative human emotion as a drug addiction. If humans were able to see and understand our true reality, we'd know that our energy, or soul, or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, can move to a higher plane of existence after we die.
Exactly. So I'm going to pause it right there real quick, right? While he says that. He's right. If we were to actually use, that's why they say we only use 5% of our brain. We're only allowed to use 5% of the brain. If we were allowed to use the entire 100% of the brain, we would be able to do different things with it as far as going into different space continuums, different portals and things like that. We will be able to see outside of their makeup as far as the reptilians and shapeshifting goes, which brings me to what Cushnis is asking about, explain the glitching, because there's more to it. So we did go over the glitching as far as the facial makeup with the glitching, right? And he also harped on it as well a little bit, to where he explained how the glitching actually works. Manipulation of the mind. Like we just said, the manipulation and perception that the reptilians cause is how they're able to do what they do with the shapeshifting, thus why the glitching actually even happens. So there's another clip of Justin Bieber to where he says, hey, all this screaming going on in the middle of the break when the song stops, it needs to stop. It needs to stop. He wanted the screaming to stop because it's no different than when you're screeching down a chalkboard with someone that is possessed. The vessel cannot take that screeching, and it affects the nerve system to where the possessor is actually being affected. So when Justin was basically freaking out on stage over the loud screeching of the screaming, it was because his possessor of the vessel was starting to get irritated and started to show its true form, and he couldn't control it. Thus, the same thing happens with the glitching. What actually happens with the glitching, if you notice, it happens during times of what? Nervousness. It affects the nerve system with the glitching. So whenever perfect example, right? When we saw Justin get his name called, all of a sudden his eyes slit. When the gentleman started to talk about change and this, that, and the third. Notice when they started emphasizing on certain words like change and transformation, all of a sudden that humanoid starts to get nervous and their whole genetic makeup starts to actually glitch out and show. Same thing happened with George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr. didn't necessarily want to be there that day. You can see it in his face. And his nervous system started to react. That's where you saw the slit in the eye. Every time you see something happening to where one of these reptilians or humanoids are getting nervous by something, that's when you'll start to see the glitch out happen, because the possessor, their nerves, that's something that they cannot control. The average humanoid cannot control the nerve system part. So whenever the nerve system part starts to act up, they start to act up.
But instead, the alien creators, addicted to our emotions, keep us here. We're born, we live to feed the creators, then we die. Then we come back and do it all over again. It's forced reincarnation. This process is handled by a piece of equipment that's been called a soul recycler, or a soul cube, which is a large box-shaped device that's installed on the moon. The cube watches us and then transmits our energy back to Earth after we die.
Now, I want to pause it right here because he's saying this very fast. But yes, there is supposedly a soul cube on the moon. I want to show you right here to where they actually showed that. Yes, the government protecting people in prison from the alien. That's funny. That's funny right there. Not necessarily, but that is hilarious right there. So look at this right here, right? Actually saved the where is it? Oh yeah. So they actually have pictures here of this actual soul catcher. And this cube that was on the moon. Now, ironically, aside from this, right, this moon cube, as you will, it looks like something out of that movie that Ice Cube was in with Mars, doesn't it? Well, speaking of Ice Cube, right, get a load of this. Ice Cube was under fire recently. This is June 11th, 2020. Was under fire for tweeting anti-Semitic images of conspiracy theories. Now, of course, they masked it with the anti-Semitic images of conspiracy theories. It doesn't even make sense what you're actually saying. This is what they actually were getting. They pretty much tried to do a hate campaign because he tried to break out the truth once again. Ice Cube is facing criticism for sharing a number of anti-Semitic images of conspiracies on Twitter. Now, you tell me where this is an actual conspiracy. The actor 50 tweeted several images over the past week that featured imagery fans quickly slammed as offensive. This was not offensive, actually. One photo depicted a group of men with exaggerated facial features, typical of anti-Semitic imagery, playing Monopoly on the backs of black people, and another suggested that the black cube of Saturn, which conspiracy theorists claim is a cult symbol, lies within the Star of David. Now, where would he get the black cube of Saturn randomly from, right? Unless, of course, we're talking about the same rapper that said "fuck America" back in the day with the America KKK at the end of it, right? We're talking about No Vaseline Ice Cube, okay? The same Ice Cube that was preaching back then, pretty much by himself, of fight the system. We're talking about that Ice Cube. So of course they're going to dismiss him saying the black cube of Saturn was inside the Star of David. Notice how they keep emphasizing the whole anti-Semitic. There's nothing anti-Semitic about talking about the black cube of Saturn being inside the Star of David. Okay. Now, besides that, okay, that wouldn't be the first time someone has mentioned the cube of Saturn or even the cube being on the moon handing our soul catchers. This is a clip here from Rumble.
Bear Leak Project. Have you ever heard of the Soul Cube? I remember reading an article about 6 or 7 years ago on a conspiracy forum, and this article talked about John Lear and how he was a part of a military program where they actually remote viewed somebody when they died, and they watched their soul go to this literally recycling station, essentially, this cube on the moon. Now, it could definitely be disinformation, absolutely. It could be a grand conspiracy, somebody's made-up story, and it could also possibly be legit.
And pretty much, it so far has been sounding very legit, honestly. Because if you think about it, if we're thinking about all the things that we've just, uncovered and went over, it would certainly mean and make sense that the whole war over our mind and body, you know how they say it's a war over our mind and body and our spirit? The war is over our souls. So this Star Wars that's happening is literally over our souls. So think about how they say, oh, your soul's going to go to heaven or your soul's going to go to hell. They start trying to scare you and use fear tactics over your soul, right? Think about that, right? This whole entire thing, if we're putting together all the facts, right? The black cube of Saturn, the soul catcher and recycler that is supposedly on the moon also being a base originally from the reptilians, or should I say home to the reptilians, and then it being the Anunnaki being our original creators, and then the reptilians supposedly being in politics, being able to manipulate us even further and keep us under their control and power, similar to how they did on the moon. If you really think about that, it isn't far-fetched at all that it is reptilian versus Anunnaki, and this is all about a fight over our souls.
Over and over again, and has been doing so for thousands of years. Now, I know the theory sounds like science fiction, but many skeptics were turned into believers on December 6, 2021. That's when, completely by accident, a lunar probe took a picture of the Soul Cube.
It's my conclusion over many years that reincarnation is a trap. It's not that it doesn't exist, although I don't think it's quite the same as it's explained. It's a bit more subtle, maybe, but I do think it's a trap.
The recycling of souls, reincarnation, is the machinery of this universe.
John Lear, son of Learjet inventor Bill Lear, flew his first flight at age 14. He became a stunt pilot, a contract pilot for the CIA, and set multiple aviation records. But John Lear's most known for his theories about the alien presence on Earth. He's also exposed a lot of information about the cube-shaped soul catcher on the moon.
The soul catcher is I think, is the 6 mile high tower in the middle of Sinus Medai, right in the middle of the center of the moon as you look at the moon. And the famous photo that Richard found, Lunar Orbiter 384M, shows that huge tower, and he also has 2 other photographs that show that tower. I think that tower is what I call the soul catcher. When you die, your soul goes to the soul catcher.
But the moon isn't the only place these soul catchers exist.
There are several soul transmission stations, both on Earth and on the moon, and depending on where you're going in your next lifetime is which transmission station takes over.
When you couple John Lear's belief in the soul catcher with David Icke's theory that we're stuck in an endless loop of reincarnation, an unsettling reality emerges that our only purpose is to serve as food for our alien jailers. And what's even more upsetting is that negative emotions are really what they crave. Supporters of the reptilian humanoid theory say that when there's a global event that affects millions of people, like a war or major conflict, it's our jailers at work.
It might explain.
Now it starts to make even more sense. It's all right, Zane. Now this time we did cover quite a lot. We did cover quite a lot in these last 2 hours. But yeah, it would make even more sense to why they harp on, or should I say, it would make even more sense to why we're attracted to negative energy. If you think about the things that we have on TV that entertain us, majority of the time it's negative. You think about the things that entertain us as far as what's funny and what's on our timelines and social media, majority of the time it's negative bullshit. I actually commented on a post into which this young lady, I think I talked about it before, this young lady was in a mukbang, with the mukbang where they're eating the food or whatever, and she was pretty much obese while she was doing this mukbang, but it was one of those mukbangs where she was not going to stop. It was almost like a marathon thing, and she pretty much died. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, I even commented on the post, I said, we have gotten to a place now to where we find someone dying of obesity in front of our eyes on a live stream as entertainment. We don't deserve to be a human race anymore. We truly don't. Because if that is what entertains us, we need a huge reset at this point. Need a huge reset. If entertainment is negative, or should I say, if entertainment is people dying. Now, different from a movie to where we know it's fake and no one's actually dying, that's different. I take liking in the creativity of gore when it's done right, because I look at it as a art form in horror movies, okay? That's a little bit different than someone actually dying and their soul leaving, possibly even going into this soul catcher and recycler, okay? So that is another reason why I do the whistleblowing. It's the main reason right there. Because I want people to know the actual truth of what goes on, okay? But again, makes plenty sense on why we feed off of, or should I say, why we're entertained by negative energy and everything that is negative, so to speak. You how many times today have you laughed at someone falling? Or have you laughed at someone being smacked? You know what I mean? How many times have you laughed at someone fighting? How many times have you cheered a fighting video on? Today. Not even in the past. Talking about just today. How many times have you laughed at someone else's misfortune? Today. Literally, we are programmed and made to be entertained and want, not even entertain, want negative energy. We may want to attract positive energy, but as the saying goes, once a hood rat, always a hood rat. That hood rat always going to go back to that negative energy because that's all they know. As my Lyft driver said earlier, we just have to be taught better. We weren't taught better. We were literally programmed to want nothing but negative energy.
Why Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien is so violent. Why are we always in states of war? Why are we competing and always challenged by murder and violence?
I really don't like the idea that we're not in control of our lives. And I really hate the idea that we're not in control of our death. So my mind just rejects the idea altogether. But then I found this.
What the is that?
That is the Soul Cube on the moon.
Leaping lizards! See what I did there?
This photo was taken December 6, 2021 by the Chinese-made lunar rover Yutu-2 while exploring the far side of the moon. A cube-shaped object is clearly seen 80 meters from the Von Karman crater. And for some reason, the China National Space Administration labeled this object Mystery Hut. And this only lends credence to the idea that the moon is a sort of observatory with a soul-harvesting machine. There's even more evidence that Earth is actually what some call a prison planet. In his book, Humans Are Not From Earth, Dr. Ellis Silver contends that humans are actually from another planet. They were brought here thousands of years ago and mated with Neanderthals. The hybrid species is us.
My thesis proposes that mankind did not evolve from native Earth organisms, but evolved elsewhere and was transported to Earth between 60,000 and 200,000 years ago. Mankind is supposedly the most highly developed species on the planet, yet is surprisingly unsuited and ill-equipped for Earth's environment.
The idea that extraterrestrials played a role in human history is also known as intervention theory. Dr. Silver argues that if humans actually evolved on Earth, we'd be much more comfortable with the environment. For example, humans are really the only animals that are susceptible to sunburn. Fish, reptiles, birds all have natural ultraviolet protection in their scales and feathers. Whales and dolphins have special skin cells that repair DNA damaged by UV radiation. Any mammal with fur is protected from ultraviolet rays, including apes. If we evolved from apes, why did we lose our hair? Evolution is supposed to make us stronger, not weaker.
Not true for your Uncle Vito.
Well, see, that's the thing. So, very true. It's not supposed to necessarily make us weaker. However, that would also, and they didn't necessarily harp on it there, but that would also, and I wish I had more time to get into it. Reason why some of us would be made from the sun, and the whole melanin theory. That's what that sounds like to me.
It's true. He's pretty hairy.
Pretty hairy? Ugh, I bet that guy can open a banana with his feet.
Dr. Silver points out that human babies are basically helpless at birth. They require constant attention for years or they'll die. Yes, some species of animals require parental care for a time after birth, but there are plenty of species that require none. Insects, fish, and most reptiles are born completely self-sufficient. Some land mammals are born standing up. Some birds are born with their eyes open and able to find food on their own. No other animal on the planet is as helpless as we are at birth. Silver claims the reason so many people have bad backs is that we evolved on a planet with less gravity.
Wow. So for all y'all that thought it was just your construction job or you ain't been working out, it's because of the gravity, y'all. No, seriously though. That would make a lot more sense to why even people that are fit, even people that are actually fit and healthy and in shape, their back is the first thing usually that goes. And as she said, or should I say, as he said, it's mainly because of that. The whole, we're not necessarily used to even having gravity around us, which proves the theory again, what we talked about earlier about using 100% of your brain. When we talk about gravity and using more percentage of the brain, look what happened in the movie Matrix with Neo. When he started using more of a percentage of his brain than he was allowed to, he was actually to use a part that no one had ever seen, and he was able to dodge bullets and everything like that. So, again.
That's why as we age, our knees and hips give out.
Because of the fact that, we're not used to that actual gravity on Earth, and we came from a different planet. A lot of trained habits are probably still from that planet. As far as our DNA makeup, we probably still have a lot of habits from that planet that we just don't know yet.
We're not designed to be so heavy. We're also prone to chronic illness more than other mammals. So why were we brought here in the first place? Well, Silver has a few ideas. One is that humans were brought to Earth as a natural predator to wipe out other species. Now, if that's true, it worked. At one time, there were several different hominid species living on Earth at the same time. As recently as just 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and at least one other species coexisted with each other for several 100,000 years. Then modern man arrived, and suddenly all other species were gone. But Dr. Silver has another theory that tracks with a lot of what we've discussed today, that humans were removed from our natural environment because we were violent, we were destructive, and we overconsumed natural resources.
Well, that hasn't changed.
The theory said that the aliens erased our memories so we'd have no recollection of the civilizations and technologies we left behind. Then they dropped us off on Earth and left us to our own devices. They watched us for a while to see how we developed, and eventually they left. All the UFO activity we're seeing now could be our creators coming to check on their creation. Maybe they're checking to see if we've evolved past our violent tendencies. Maybe we're finally ready to be released from our prison and reintegrate into galactic society. If that's really why they're here, then unfortunately for us, our parole, it's going to be denied.
Right. Which is why I said before, Cube Vision. Hey, good catch there, Beer Gang. Great catch there, Beer Gang. So if we're talking about the black cube of Saturn, hold on. Let me see if I could. That makes a lot of sense there. Look at Ice Cube's logo. It's a direct derivative of the black cube of Saturn. Cube ain't never been dumb, y'all. Ice Cube ain't never been dumb. Good catch there, Beer Gang. Good catch there, sir.
The existence of the human soul has been pondered, well, forever. Greek philosophers like Plato and Socrates proposed an immortal soul that lives on after the body's death. Many religions say the soul originates from God and exists eternally. But does scientific evidence support the existence of a soul that can be quantified? In the early 20th century, physician Duncan McDougall tried to determine if the soul had measurable mass. He thought that if a soul existed, it would have weight. So upon death, the soul would escape and the weight loss could be detected. McDougall had 6 dying patients placed on sensitive scales, finding that they lost an average of 21 grams at the moment of death. He concluded this represented the soul's mass. But this small sample size and errors in methodology cast doubt on the experiment. Modern neuroscience says our consciousness and sense of self exist in our physical brain, not a separate soul. Brain imaging shows that our personality, our memories, and capabilities are tied to physical patterns and activity within our neurons. Damage to certain areas of the brain through injury or disease can impact sensory perception, mobility, emotions, and even one's identity. However, there is an argument that, sure, the brain is responsible for cognition and awareness, but a soul could simply be energy that creates our consciousness. And if so, that consciousness could continue after death. According to new theories using quantum physics, The soul may exist in another dimension beyond our normal space-time. Some tie this to quantum non-locality and entanglement. This is where information is passed between particles not just faster than the speed of light, but instantly, no matter how far apart they are. This theory says the soul interacts with the human body through quantum states, exchanging information instantly across any distance. Studies of near-death experiences provide intriguing reports of the soul leaving the body and passing through a tunnel and encountering angelic beings or dead relatives. Yet neuroscience says many elements of NDEs are generated by physical brain activity under stress. Out-of-body and near-death episodes have been induced in controlled settings by stimulating specific parts of the brain. Conclusive scientific evidence of the human soul has yet to be discovered. But maybe the soul isn't meant to be detected with a scale or a microscope or a computer.
That's because it's handled by quantum physics, but that's a whole other story.
And just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Religions around the world say the soul is eternal. In Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the soul originates from God and can achieve eternal life through faith and virtuous living. Hinduism and Sikhism believe the soul is immortal and reincarnated based on karma. Buddhism is a little different though. The Wheel of Life provides a symbolic map of samsara in Buddhism. Buddhists must attain enlightenment before moving beyond this cycle, and that can take many, many tries. And that's starting to sound a lot like the soul recycler. And here's something interesting. In the image of the Wheel of Life, which is found on the walls of monasteries and schools all over the world, Buddha's pointing at the moon.
Isn't that interesting? So the statue Buddha, if you think about it, the statue Buddha is always like this, right? He's always like this. That whole time, how many people actually knew that he was pointing up there at the moon and actually trying to tell you something?
The moon is the most familiar object in the night sky. It's inspired stories and myths and even religions. The moon has fueled scientific intrigue throughout human history. But here's the thing. The moon is weird. By all accounts, it shouldn't even be there. The moon's orbit is extremely close to the Earth. In fact, it's the largest moon in relation to its host planet in our entire solar system, or any solar system. We've never found anything like this in the galaxy. And this proximity has made total solar eclipses possible. This is because of the precise diameters and distances between the sun, moon, and Earth. This is an unbelievable coincidence. Some might say, impossible.
There is no astronomical reason why the moon and the sun should fit so well. It is the sheerest of coincidences, and only the Earth among all the planets is blessed in this fashion.
It's not only too close, it's too big.
That's what she said. What?
Using other planets as a reference, the size of the moon should be about 40 miles in diameter. That's it. It's over 2,000 miles wide. This is also not seen anywhere else. The closest comparison is Pluto and its moon Charon, which is about 2/3 the size of Pluto. But this probably doesn't count because Pluto and Charon are a double dwarf planet.
That's what she said. What?
The Earth and Moon are also really a double planet. But there's something else strange about that. The barycenter, or center of gravity between the Earth and Moon, is inside the Earth. That means there should be a wobble in the Moon's orbit. The Moon does wobble a little bit, but its orbit is one of the most perfectly circular that's ever been seen. The Moon is also precisely locked in orbit so the same side always faces Earth. This is also highly unusual among moons and planets. Some scientists argue that the Moon doesn't wobble because it's not very dense. But that's also a problem. If the Moon and Earth were formed at the same time, which is the leading theory, then why is the Earth so much more dense?
Because the moon is hollow.
Right.
Which again, being that the moon is hollow, that again goes back to what they were talking about with the moon being able to be a holographic projection machine almost, or should I say the flat wall that you can play the hollow projection off of. So if you're thinking about using satellites and whatnot for Project Bluebeam, Bluebeam is probably going to be from the moon.
The lunar orbiter experiments vastly improved our knowledge of the moon's gravitational field, indicating the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow.
In November 1969, Apollo 12 launched as NASA's second manned mission to the moon. One of the key objectives was investigating the moon's interior. Apollo 12 astronauts placed seismometers on the lunar surface, similar to those used to detect earthquakes on Earth. The astronauts then intentionally crashed their ascent stage module into the moon to gather seismic data. Now, instead of typical seismic patterns, the data showed the moon vibrating for over an hour. The moon was famously described as ringing like a bell. The phenomenon led some to speculate that the moon might be hollow or contain significant hollow spaces. This theory is supported by the still classified Apollo 17 project called Chapel Bell. And this sounds like an experiment that has something to do with sound, but all these years later, it's still classified. Why? In 1970, two Soviet scientists proposed that not only is the moon hollow, the moon is an artificial spacecraft brought to Earth a long time ago. This spaceship moon theory explains many of the anomalies, like the low density, the sound reverberation, and why the moon is even here at all. Spaceship Moon also explains the strange crater issue.
Crater issue?
Oh yeah, moon craters are very odd. When an asteroid impacts a moon or planet, it leaves a crater. The bigger the asteroid, the deeper the crater, right?
Yeah, I feel you.
Well, on the moon, no matter how big the object that impacts it, craters don't penetrate deeper than a couple of miles. Now, this could be explained by a rigid, impenetrable outer shell encasing the moon.
Spaceship Moon!
If the astronomical data is reduced, it is found that the data require that the interior of the moon is less dense than the outer parts. Indeed, it would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere.
Data also indicates the moon's core is less dense than the outer layers, the complete opposite of, well, every other celestial object ever discovered. This could be evidence that the moon has vast hollow inner cavities. Also, the soil and moon dust on the surface are actually older than the rock and soil within the moon. That only makes sense if the interior moon was mined, hollowed out, and then the material brought to the surface. Now, there are scientific explanations for all of this, but to be honest, they fall short.
Looking at all the anomalies and unanswered questions about the moon, the best explanation for the moon is an observational error. It doesn't exist.
It's easier to explain.
Isn't that something? So, something that they are even saying is, supposedly used as a holographic projection is not actually even real at all, and it's supposed to be hollow. Meaning it's see-through. So, think about that theory now. If that's true, that correlates with the whole thought of souls going to the moon, as well as the reptilians being able to watch us and be controllers of the moon. Because they're master manipulators and making you think of something that isn't even there is actually there.
The non-existence of the moon, then its existence.
We cannot help but come to the conclusion that the moon, by rights, ought not to be there. The fact that it is one of those strokes of luck almost too good to accept.
The moon is weird. It shouldn't be there, and it might be hollow. But is it a transmission device that affects our behavior? Well, there's more crime during a full moon. There are more car accidents. Sensitivity to pain is higher during a full moon. A full moon disrupts our sleep. Some people are prone to erratic behavior during a full moon. This is called the werewolf effect. This is also where the word lunatic comes from. Talk to a cop or a nurse. They'll tell you that they can tell when it's getting close to a full moon. Again, science tries to explain this erratic behavior. Like there's more crime during a full moon because it's easier to see.
No. It's also easier to get caught.
Right.
Way easier to get caught.
Science is thin. And notice that all these changes in behavior during a full moon are negative. More crime, more pain, more car crashes. If there are aliens feeding off our negative emotions and they use the moon to do it, well, suddenly everything makes sense. But there is good news. You can fight back. Reptilian humanoid aliens using technology to alter our reality in order to create negative emotions? Our souls being used for food, then recycled over and over again on the moon? This story is a lot. And how much of it is true? Well, a lot of it depends on your perspective and what you choose to believe. But let's take it one piece at a time. The Anunnaki are documented in Sumerian texts, But there's plenty of documentation of Zeus and Apollo and Athena and the rest of the Greek gods. Same with Roman gods, Norse gods, all gods really. But are any of those gods real? Well, you decide. But Zecharia Sitchin's interpretations of Sumerian texts have been largely discredited and disregarded. He's been criticized for inaccurate translations of the Sumerian tablets. Skeptics say he manipulated the translations in order to support his theory.
Yeah, but his story is true.
Maybe. But the story about gods coming from the sky, creating man or helping man, that story is almost universal. The Anunnaki are also connected to the Great Flood, which is a story found in every culture on Earth. Supporters of the Anunnaki theory claim that human genetics have traces of alien DNA. The truth is, human DNA is pretty boring.
But at the end of the day, none of it is actually fiction as far as how we were created. So we've now heard how many theories and how many actual evidences of fact that we were created from the Anunnaki? There hasn't been a single denial of that whatsoever, that we are created from the Anunnaki. So if we are being real here, the true holders of our soul are the Anunnaki.
Our DNA is close to everything on Earth. Chimps share almost 99% of their DNA with humans. Dogs and cows share around 80%. Birds and humans share 65% of their DNA. Humans even share over 50% of their DNA with bananas.
You're related to a banana?
Yup.
Maybe that's why you got a peel.
Dr. Ellis Silver's theory that humans didn't originate on Earth is really interesting. He lays out a lot of scientific evidence to support this theory. But even he admits the theory has some holes, and he's released updates to try and fill in some of these holes. Still, mainstream science rejects the idea that humans originated on a different planet. But there is a wrinkle. In 2020, researchers discovered that about 50,000 years ago, ancient humans procreated with a species that scientists didn't know existed. They call this ghost DNA, and the timing lines up perfectly with Dr. Silver's theory. His book is amazing, and I'd love to do a full episode on how humans might have been transported here, so if you'd like to see that, let me know. That will be a wild ride. Now, let's talk lizard people.
Lizard.
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 Better.
The most well-known proponent of the reptilian conspiracy is David Icke.
My hero.
David Icke is well-read, well-spoken, and highly entertaining. His theories are extremely creative. But like most conspiracy theories, you can't prove or disprove him.
Yaha!
But remember, in 1991, he claimed to be the son of God and the world was going to end, and he made this claim on television while wearing a turquoise tracksuit.
Good to see you. You do claim to be the son of God.
Oh, come on, heroes wear tracksuits.
The lizard people story seems to have started in 1934 with an LA Times article. A mining engineer claimed to have found tunnels underneath Los Angeles. A Hopi Indian told him the legend of the lizard people.
Tunnels underneath Los Angeles. Now, where have we heard that one from, right? What's good, Juju? Where have we heard about the tunnels underneath Los Angeles? Oh, I don't know. Didn't we hear about that with Diddy's mansion? To where they said there were tunnels underneath the mansion? Didn't we hear about that the same thing with the Playboy mansion? To where there were tunnels underneath L.A.?
Who are an advanced race that escaped through the tunnels 5,000 years ago.
Well, that's why so many movie stars are shape-shifting lizard people. Easy commute.
Maybe, but there are no tunnels and there is no Hopi legend of the lizard people, so I don't believe that one. And honestly, when I started this topic, I didn't believe any of it. Well, except for the moon stuff. The moon is weird. But while researching, I found myself bouncing between feelings of depression and fear and anxiety and especially anger. The message boards, blogs, comment sections I came across are filled with people expressing outrage. They're furious that they have us all trapped in this never-ending loop of misery, that we're made to endure this torturous, unfair life time and time again. We're not given a choice to come back or not. Our only purpose is to be food for our prison guards. But if they truly believe that an advanced race is feeding off our negative emotions, well, they're giving our jailers exactly what they want. There were so many comments that were blame-seeking. I saw a lot of people with a self-centered victim mentality. It was frustrating to read, but I understand it. Life is hard. Life is unpredictable. And life is painful. When things in life go wrong, it's easy to shift responsibility to a theoretical they instead of looking in the mirror. David Icke, John Lear, and others who promote the reptilian conspiracy say that we don't have to exist in an endless cycle of pain and reincarnation. Negative emotions fuel the cycle. Positive emotions can break it. So you have a choice. You can choose to be the change. Choose kindness over anger. Choose acceptance over judgment. And choose gratitude over the endless desire for more.
And that would go with exactly why this is about the purpose of life. Remember what I said in the first community post? It's about the purpose of life? Because literally, in the end of the movie Dogma, literally, at the end of the movie Dogma, we have Alanis Morissette, and she touches the nose of the main character. The reason why she touches the nose of the main character is because the main character asks, hey, why am I here? What's the purpose of life? And she went and just said, boop, and touched her nose. Now, I thought about that and said, well, why did she touch her nose? And I thought about the shape of the nose and the bridge, right? If you think about the actual head of the triangle at the front, and that wraps around the nostril, what does it make? A heart. If it makes a heart, if each nose, if you think about it, unless you actually, like I said, again, reptilian, the makeup of the nose is actually a heart. So, being said that, and she touches her nose when she asks what's the purpose of life, I said, holy shit, the purpose of life is love? Then that was almost a decade ago I thought about that. But more and more, I am finding more and more evidence that that actually is true. The purpose of life is actually love and positive energy. It's not actually for us to work, make money, and die. That's the manipulator's part of it. For us to work, make money, and die. And then start it all over again. When we're actually supposed to just be here to love. We're just supposed to be here and be positive. And the whole idea of even giving us choice was the systematic problem, of course, but the choice was over money at all times. That's the unfortunate part about it, is that it's always been over money. And the parole officers, if you will, the reptilians, have made it so we are doomed with entertainment by negativity, which that is what they feed off of, our negativity. And the Anunnaki want us to be all positive and just love one another, because the purpose of life, again, is love. So, with that being said, we have concluded our episode on Star Wars here. And I'll probably be back tomorrow night. If I'm not, well, actually not tomorrow night, because I have a lot to do tomorrow night. But I'm probably going to extend my stay here. So you guys will probably see me again Sunday evening. I did have one more to talk about this tonight, but like I said, we won't get into it because it's getting a little bit late. Next one on the next part, we're going to talk about the Netflix documentary Leave the World Behind, because that's pretty much correlating with what we spoke about here, into where even I am contemplating on seriously moving to Japan or Africa, because shit is literally hitting the fan over here. And yeah, it's just to the point where if you don't leave America, it might be a bad idea. It might be a terrible idea if you do not leave America. And what we learned today, with it being the war over our souls at the end of the day, and them always feeding off of negative energy, it's always going to be a war. It's always going to be a choice of, do you want this money or do you want to die? It's always going to be that choice. And with that choice being said, I need to leave.
Until next time. And it's a word man can eat at all. When things are big that should be small. Who can tell what magic spells we'll be doing for us? And I'm giving all my love to this world, only to be told I can't see, I can't breathe, no, my will will be. And nothing's gonna change the way we live, 'cause we can always take the never give. And now the things are changing for the worse.
know what it is you really do.